We are joined now from the European hospital in Khan Yunis, Gaza, by Monica Johnston. Johnston is from Canada, currently lives in Oregon, but is in Khan Yunis at the moment. Monica, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So we reported earlier this week about the situation for you and the others who are on the medical mission to Khan Yunis. Israel, by taking over the Rafah border and closing it completely, no supplies have been able to get in and out, but also no people have been able to get in and out. I understand your mission was supposed to leave this week, has not been able to. Yesterday when we spoke, you said the UN was going to do a trial run where they were going to send staff members on that run. And if they were able to survive the trip, from the hospital to Rafah, not be killed by the IDF, that then the next day medical staff would be able to start leaving. What is the circumstances with that plan?
Yeah, that's exactly right, how you said that. So the UN did make their trial run on Monday, and we were supposed to start trial runs with our teams yesterday. We got notified that the UN's convoy was successful, but then ours would not be able to take place yesterday. So as of now, we still have not heard when we will start those trial runs.
And you had also told me that they were going to do, about 2 at a time, which is nowhere near the entire team, but that you guys were insisting that, 2 be allowed in. So can you describe why that is, and how do these missions work? And why is it so important that new humanitarian aid workers be able to come in to replace you?
Absolutely. I really don't understand the reasoning. I know there's multiple mission teams here, so splitting it up to allow for a few members from each team, I'm not sure if it's the IDF or who's limiting the amount of people in each convoy, but and then the prioritization. So when we did get word that our convoy was going to be leaving on Wednesday, it's hard to keep track of the days here. This is why we need relief. On Tuesday, that none of our team members were selected for that convoy based on some kind of priorities that the WHO has, which we're not privy to. So the reason we do need that relief is because, we're exhausted, but we can't just leave and abandon the people here. Many units are working with only nursing students. Many units are run by interns and residents. So we need the support of humanitarian workers to help keep things afloat.
Well, and speaking of actually kind of shifting from the flow of people to the flow of supplies, as Ryan mentioned earlier, can you tell us a little bit about difficulties in getting what you need for medical treatment to you guys so that you can do your jobs and help people be safe and recover from instances in which they were not kept safe?
Absolutely. So think of a hospital in America. They get daily shipments of supplies. Here, our team brought in 300 suitcases for a 2-week period. We went through almost all of those supplies in 1 week. So, we're already coming to a depleted situation. We, I guess, incorrectly expected certain things like hand soap and sanitizer, paper towels to be here. So we didn't prioritize those items in our 300 bags. And we get here to find no units have soap, no units have hand sanitizer. So some basic things that help save lives, help prevent infections. And that's what we're seeing, just a rampant infection rate, and people are dying from this. So we're running out of antibiotics, we're running out of wound care supplies, pain medicine, medication that supports vital organs. We're running out of all of those things. So it's so desperately needed to reopen the borders.
And so I noticed in a video that you had sent to us earlier that you had something, I don't know the exact term for it, it's kind of a stent in your arm. I don't know if it's too personal to ask, but can you talk a little bit about what the situation is like for you and the other medical professionals that you're with? What's going on there? Is that dehydration, or what are you facing?
Of us have just been hit with gastroenteritis. So whether it was something we ate or, we had some water that wasn't purified, for the most part, we're drinking bottled water, but now we're a little nervous about that supply. So we've been starting to ration that a little bit more. So rationing that leads to dehydration. It's warm here. I'm not used to this climate. I'm doing 20 dressing changes in 4 hours. It's hard, strenuous work. So, me and my roommate personally, we had gastroenteritis. So, we're dehydrated from that. We both had IVs for 2 days. I received 3.5 liters of fluid and continued to work as much as I could through that. Because, you're here and the idea of being in bed sick, it was devastating. I'm here to help and I'm sick and I can't help. And it just wasn't acceptable.
And what kind of wounds and illnesses are you guys seeing? Like, what's a rough breakdown, just from your perspective, having treated so many people now?
So lots of tragic amputations, so explosions, and they lose limbs at the site. And then extensive blast injuries with shrapnel that ends up causing a wound to need to be amputated later on. So we have those extensive blast injuries and then burns on top of that. Lots of head injuries with that. So if you imagine a blast and getting thrown out, one of my patients, she's an 11-year-old. This is going to be tough. She lost her dad, and she was found 2 houses over from their home. And her and her brother were brought to our hospital, and her brother died in the emergency room. So she suffered a cut to her head down to her skull, fractured pelvis, a fractured leg, and extensive blast injuries to the backside of her legs, where it's going to take months to heal if she doesn't get infected here, and multiple grafts if she doesn't get infected. So, this is what we're seeing. The magnitude. I work at a level 1 trauma burn center, and I have not seen this magnitude at this frequency. At one point, we were getting, 5, 6 of these at a time. And, level 1 trauma will struggle with that, let alone a place that has no resources.
And correct me if I'm wrong, to recover from injuries like that, you generally need more calories, more nutrition than average. Can you talk a little bit about what people what people have access to and what the effect of that is on their recovery?
Very simply, what they have access to is nothing, or near nothing. We're talking about maybe 1 can of Ensure for an entire day for one of these wound patients. That no one can survive on that, let alone someone who has an extensive injury. Our patients back in America, they fight with us and say, I can eat, and 2 days later we're putting a feeding tube in them because you just physically can't consume that amount of calories. So it's leading to infections, graft losses, if we ever get to that point, further amputations, just so many complications because of that.
And somebody from your mission sent us video in control room. If you can put up this VO, they sent us this video of the scene from a safe house that some of the medical staff were using. That's the trip from the safe house to the hospital. They were then told, "Don't go back to the safe house anymore. It's not safe. It's too close. We think the IDF might strike it, even if they're deconflicting and giving them the coordinates." So I'm curious, did you spend any time in a safe house, and are you hearing shelling? What's the situation like as we speak with regards to violence?
So our team in particular has only been at the hospital, staying at the hospital. A couple of team members have ventured out to visit surrounding areas, and they just speak of the devastation, kind of like what you have shown. From inside the hospital, which is considered a green zone, we are hearing shelling all the time, constant whirl of the drones. This morning at 6:30 a.m. was the largest blast that I have ever heard. And it felt like it was in the next building over. It woke me out of a dead sleep and my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. And I just sat there and I kept waiting. I kept waiting for another one. And there were, but fortunately not for us this time.
I assume that some of the medical staff who are Palestinian there were in some of the other hospitals that have been, raided by the IDF. What have they given you any advice on how to handle doing this work in this war zone? And what have they told you about their experience in other hospitals?
So some of the other hospitals, it's just infrastructure. I think at this point, 7-8 months out, the infrastructure is just gone. So some of the other hospitals were run a little bit more smoothly. This one, there's been just so much chaos, but I think it's, you think of all the people who have displaced here and have been continually displaced. So I heard, I'm not sure if this is accurate, but at one point there was 13,000 people occupying our hospital corridors on this campus here. And, when we came, you had just a small path to walk through the entire hospital. And there were walls and walls of curtains and tarps housing off families' little living quarters. So, yeah, other hospitals, I don't think quite, they have their own problems from what I hear. And obviously when they were invaded, absolutely had issues, but I don't think they had this mass displacement to hear that just is leading to even more chaos.
As you're thinking about the possibility of leaving, like how do you balance the different factors? On the one hand, you've got the Palestinians who are in the hospital saying, if Westerners leave, we're all going to be killed. On the other hand, you need people to replace you, otherwise the thing completely collapses. But then on the third hand, you guys are rationing water and running out of supplies. I assume some are in, facing significant health risks. How are people kind of thinking through the series of terrible options in front of you?
This team has been so amazing. I cannot speak to the magnitude of how wonderful this team is. Everybody cares so much about the Palestinian people here. We're very adamant about the fact that we can't just leave without replacement. But that does mean replacement of not only personnel, but supplies. We've kind of learned from the Palestinians here, to give. You see them and they have nothing and they're constantly inviting you for tea, and what little food they have, they're giving and giving. So as a volunteer here, it's hard not to want to do the same thing for these people. And the thought of leaving them and abandoning them is just, it's not on our minds.
You had mentioned, by the way, that a child had opened what he thought was a can of tuna and had an arm blown off. Is that a cluster bomb that looks like a can of tuna? What are people finding in the street there?
I'm not quite certain about that, but I was called to the OR to help, and I was told his story. People are hungry. They find stuff. They want to eat. So, there's potential that these things are getting placed in people's houses when the IOF is, raiding homes and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then affecting people like children are finding them. And when you're hungry, you can't blame them. Right.
Wow. That's dark.
Can't blame them. No.
That is dark. And any final thoughts? What is the understaffing doing? What's it like working in a hospital that is this understaffed? And any final thoughts people should know about what the situation is right now?
So yeah, the understaff. We've gone into the ICU 2 mornings now and found patients in a state of rigor mortis. So that's meaning that they have been dead for some time. All their IV lines were still running. They were still hooked up to all the machines, and it showed a flat line on the monitor, but there's just no staff to respond. You walk into the ICU and there's alarms 24/7 on every single patient. So, I asked a nurse about this because I wanted to understand, like, are you exhausted? What is it? And I eventually got out from her that when the patient comes in, they know who's going to live and who's not. And, you only have so many resources, which includes, personal strength and resources. And to put that emotion and strength into somebody that is not going to make it is too much for them after such a long period of doing this. So, people are dying and things aren't getting caught. Just a lot of extra unneeded death, I think.
Yeah. What portion do you think of people who are dying there would not die if they were in your in your facility back in Oregon?
I mean, I don't know about specific numbers, but 80-90% of these injuries are survivable.
Right. Just with basic supplies and attention and yes. Calories.
Exactly, and that's the hardest thing, to sit back and not have any control over. I know it needs to be done, but I have nothing to do it with.
Right. What's the prospect for you before we let you go? When do you expect that you and your team will be able to get out and get swapped in with a new mission?
We have our next team sitting in Egypt waiting. I personally have just kind of settled in. I don't know. We're promised daily that tomorrow we'll get a convoy out. I can't think about that. I'm just taking care of the people here and taking care of my team and myself right now.
Yeah. Well, if and when you do get on that convoy, we all desperately hope that the IDF does not fire on it. And I hope that the attention that is finally being paid to this at least helps a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, Nurse Johnston, thank you so much for everything you're doing. Deeply appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.